Hello and welcome to today's Office Hours presentation. This is Paul Hoyt, your host. Our Office Hours presentation is a relaxed, informal mentoring program that we do every Monday at noon Pacific time, well, almost every Monday. All those recording slides and exercises are archived in our members area, and the recordings are available on the YouTube channel at youtube.com/users/Paul Hoyt. The reasons we do these is because we know that being a successful small business owner can be a great experience, but we also know that it's tough. You need education, training, tools, and team to be successful, and we want you to get to know us. Because when you get to know us, you'll know that first and most importantly, we really do care about you. We want you to be successful in every area of life. We want you to find the greatness, the happiness, the divinity within yourself, and then remember it, embrace it, and live it every single day as we do. Our passion is to increase the survival rate, accelerate the growth rate, and reduce the struggle rate of businesses in America. And our vision is to help millions of CEOs and entrepreneurs accelerate their business growth while enjoying greater harmony and balance in their lives. If you find these office hours presentations beneficial to you, well, then please keep coming back and tuning in and asking questions and join into the discussion, but also share the information with your friends. We love for anybody to sign up for our newsletter, sign up for our network, and come and attend these office hours presentations. And right now, for those of you who sign up, there's 124 recordings available online in our tribe portal on probably about 100 different subjects. A lot of them are live group coaching ones where there wasn't a formal presentation, and some of them are repeats. I've probably repeated about 8 or 10 of them that I did 2.5 years or so ago. So we're approaching like 100 office hours presentations, on each one of them like a 30 to 40 minute PowerPoint presentation on a variety of different subjects. Our office hours agendas are usually an in-depth discussion of a business success principle, and then I offer closing remarks and special offers and invitations for next week, and we go into open Q&A and coaching. This week, of course, it's all Q&A and coaching because it's a live group coaching version of our office hours. In between these office hours, I invite you to join us in the Awakened CEO community on both LinkedIn and Facebook, where we publish a business success principle a day, 4 days a week, and I do an Energy of the Day posting on Facebook every day. Today was day number 949 days in a row for posting an Energy of the Day on Facebook. Today's topic is live group coaching, where it's just open questions and answers. We invite people to submit questions live during the broadcast, and some folks have submitted questions via email as well, so we're happy to take those. When we talk about our office hours, we try to relate it to one or more of the key performance areas of success that I wrote about in my 2004 book, The Foundation Factor, and we're ready to talk about anything and everything. So you're welcome to ask questions on marketing, financial management, sales, leadership, operations, product development, customer service, just anything and everything about starting and growing a small business. We also relate the subject matter of the day to one or more of the levels of performance that we defined in our Awakened CEO system, and this is open game on any of those. So you're welcome to ask questions about the mindset and the methods and the momentum. In previous office hours, it's only been a couple of office hours since we did our last live group coaching, so I want to take just a minute and review those to remind you about what we had talked about. Office hours number 123 was entitled Who Gets What? Sharing Revenues with Your Partners, and office hours number 124 was on Hook 'em, a guide to building habit-forming products, or the art and science of gamification. In office hours 123 that we did a couple of weeks ago, it was on sharing revenues with your partners. We talked about business model basics. So in general, the principle behind this presentation is if you know how you're making your money and what you're spending money on, then you can safely outsource those activities to partners. If you know how much money your business model has for sales and marketing, you'll know how to set commission structures and how to pay affiliate fees and referral fees. If you know how much you're spending internally for bookkeeping, say, you can safely engage the services of another company to assist with bookkeeping and accounting and CFO work. We talked about several different types of business models during that presentation. We started with a fairly simple service business model. In this particular example, sales were $100,000, the profits were 10% or about $10,000. The overhead was $15,000. Sales and marketing expenses were $25,000, and $50,000, or 50% of all revenues, was reserved for delivery. So if you had a solopreneur's business and you're operating a simple service model, you might enjoy as much as $60,000 to $70,000 in revenue from you personally in $100,000 total revenue for the company, because your low overhead is pretty low. You're only paying for your overhead in sales and marketing, which is only taking away $30,000 to $40,000 of your revenue, and the rest of it you can spend in the way that you want to spend it. We also talk about a retail product business model. In a retail product business model, it's quite different. The retailers get 50% of the list price of the products that you sell, and your profits are only 5% of list price, overhead 7.5% of list price, sales and marketing 12.5% of list price, and cost of goods sold about 25% of list price itself. And that is a pretty simple retailer's model that we have. Pardon me while I skip through this slide. I accidentally had this slide in here twice. We did also talk about an information products business model, which I failed to get the slide in. In an information products business model, you don't have all this cost of goods sold in the product's cost, so you're able to spend a lot more on marketing and sales and able to enjoy a lot more profit as well. In Office Hours 124, we talked about the principles of gamification. We talked about a book called Hooked, which was written by Nur Eyal a few years ago. So we talked a little bit about the author. We gave a brief introduction to gamification. We talked about points, badges, levels, and leaders boards. We talked about the 4 steps to the Hook model. And this is a Hook model that we reviewed in that presentation. In the Hook model, we talk about how triggers get people to take actions, and with those actions you would have a reward, and hopefully a variable reward, and then they would make an investment back into the system, which would then give them another trigger, etc., to hook people on playing the game, so to speak, and talk about why you would want to put that in your business. And here's some of the reasons about why you need to understand this, because you need to know yourself why you are being gamed and when you are being gamed, so that you can employ the techniques in your business, increase your customer loyalty, increase your revenues and profits, increase your pricing flexibility, increase your team's performance, and bottom line, increase your sales. So there's a lot that we have to learn about gamification and about how we can persuade other people, and in some cases manipulate other people into doing what we want them to do through the power of empowering them in some way, of helping them feel like winners whenever they are doing the things that we want them to do. It's really quite an interesting art and science. So those were the 2 previous office hours that we did in between the last group coaching session and today's group coaching session. In addition to that, I just spent 4 days in Los Angeles, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, attending and presenting at a conference there called Angel Money Marketing Live with my friend Greg Ryder as the host. And I talked about the power of clarity and how important it is for everybody to have great clarity in their business, great clarity of vision, great clarity of status, and great clarity of plans. So you need to know where you want to go and be very clear on that, and not only where you want to go, but why you want to do it, so that you can be very, very clear and allow yourself to unleash your own passions and engage the visionary aspects of other people. Be very clear on where you are today so you can plot a course, and be very clear on how you are going to get from where you are today to where you want to be. So I really enjoyed the opportunity to present for about 90 minutes at that conference last weekend, and I suspect in another few weeks or so we'll have an office hours presentation on the power of clarity itself. So with that quick review, I want to jump into open Q&A. You're welcome to ask any question on any subject that you would like, and we'll do our very best to inform you, maybe even entertain you with our answers. So with that, Stephanie, do we have any questions from our live audience today, in addition to the ones that have come in via email?
Yes, we do. Let me get the first one. I'm just getting started with my business, so I really don't know my business model yet. How can I share revenues with my partners?
That's a really good question. Ideally, you would know exactly, after having some history over time, exactly how much you're spending on sales and marketing, and how much you're spending on bookkeeping, and how much you're spending on other sorts of things. So you could say, if I just take this money that I've been spending on internally here and I allocate it over here, or maybe I can spend less in outsourcing it, or I can spend the same amount and get a better job done. That's the ideal situation. If you don't know what the ideal is, or you don't know what your history is because you have no history, then you just kind of follow industry guidelines. So for example, industry guidelines are, if you're selling an information product which has very low cost of delivery or zero cost of delivery because somebody might be downloading it off the internet, it's typical in the industry to to share 50% of the revenues of information products, especially those with digital downloads, to the people who are facilitating the event, who are organizing the event, who are sending out the emails on your behalf, and are somehow making those sales possible. Same thing is true if you're speaking live at an event and you're selling stuff from the back of the room. Tradition is about 50% on information products, even if those information products have books and tapes and CDs associated with them. With service products, which primarily are what we provide here at Hoyt Management Group, we don't pay that much for our affiliate fees. The industry standard there is 20 or 25%. It's because those have such a high cost of delivery. Anything over 20% when it's a service model where there is a labor component associated with the delivery, or a product model when you're physically shipping something out to somebody that you have to make somewhere, anything above a 20% is fairly rare. 20 or 25% is the upper limit. So we use our industry standards. Industry standards are industry standards for commissions, industry standards for referral fees, for lead generation fees, for commissions that we pay our reps, for industry standards for accounting and bookkeeping services, etc. And if you don't know what those standards are, you can ask people. A really qualified professional service provider will share with you, exactly what they're receiving from other clients, what works for them, what makes sense for them, and you can judge whether or not that works for you based on their response. Or you can talk to consultants, to CPAs, to folks like us who have helped hundreds of businesses create their business models. We have a pretty good idea about what's going to work and what's not going to work. If somebody comes up and says, I want to spend overall 30% on sales and marketing in my product business, I'm happy to share with them that that's a tremendous amount, because most product businesses, the sales and marketing is around, anywhere from 5 to 8%, might be as high as 10%. Services businesses a little higher, information product businesses are a lot higher, but with product businesses, it's 8 to 10%. So get somebody on your team who has experience in your industry, who has what I call domain experience or industry experience, who can help you answer those questions about what might be appropriate for you to share with your partners, even though you're just getting started and you have really no financial history on that. Stephanie, any comments or next question?
Yeah. Let's get to the next question here. Some more questions are coming in. A lot of the presenters I listen to seem to have the same style. They talk about their childhood, get the audience to say yes a lot, and complete sentences, and then offer something at a very high price and discount the heck out of it. Is that all part of gamification?
You know, it is part of gamification. So generally speaking, gamification is making people feel like a winner in some way by doing what you want them to do. So if I'm engaging with an audience, by the way, and I'm saying things like, um, Do you agree with that? Or I'm starting to say something like where I want them to complete the sentence, and I get them to complete the sentence. If we can build on that energy and enthusiasm, and they feel more enlivened and more vital because they're getting caught up in the energy and the excitement of the event, in a sense, that's gamification, because you're making them feel like winners, because you're making them feel more empowered, because you're raising the energy in the entire room. So in that sense, it's gamification. If during the presentation, you're saying things like, you know, the first one to give me the answer to this question is going to get a book, or the first one to do this is going to get a whatever, or the first 10 people to run back to the back of the room and give me their credit cards are going to get this super bonus discount. You know, that's really gamification, because the people who do what you want them to do, you know, they're winners in front of the entire crowd. So that's absolutely gamification. And I think some of the techniques that we see presenters use these days, you know, are, you know, they have hypnotic characteristics to them. I think they're borderline manipulation, and they certainly are becoming very, very customary. So there's been this this art and science of training people to engage with the room, to get the room to say things, to get the room to interact with you, and put a lot of energy into the presentation by running to the left-hand side of the stage and running to the right-hand side of the stage and being a very enthusiastic presenter yourself. That is, it's proven to work, because people who do those techniques generally sell more from the back of the room. They get more people to enroll with their systems than people who do not use those techniques as well. So the game that's being played there is by the person who's doing the presentation. It's not necessarily that we're getting the people in the audience to play the game consciously, but we as presenters are playing this game consciously. How much can we raise the energy in the room? How much can we get the audience to interact with us and respond to our questions and complete the sentences? How much can we get them to stand up when we tell them to stand up, to clap their hands when we tell them to clap their hands, to pat themselves on the back or their friend on the back when we tell them to do that, etc. Because all of those things have been proven over time to increase the sales that we have at the back of the room and all of the engagement. So yes, it's gamification. I frankly am getting a little tired of that. You know, there are some events that you can go to that are just sell-a-thons. The event that I just went to was not, but there are some that are just sell-a-thons, and after you listen to about 8 presenters use the same seminar blueprint, you know, where we start out with a tragedy, we talk about our early childhood, we talk about how we overcame a nasty obstacle, and then we systemize that and began to share with other people how we did that, and we, you know, put a huge price to it, and then we discount the heck out of it. I'm getting a little bit tired of that, frankly. I prefer you know, something that's a little bit uncommon. I'm getting tired of saying yes when the presenter tells me to say yes, and pat myself on the back when they tell me to pat myself on the back, etc. But that may just be me, because I've listened to so many of these. I think that anybody that's listened to 100 of them would start to see the pattern and start to know the pattern, be comfortable with the pattern, and maybe even be bored with the pattern. So, you know, you may not be to that point yet yourself. So the big question is it gamification? Yeah, it's gamification. It's gamification in terms of making the audience feel like winners, and it's gamification internally, because I'm playing a game with myself to see how much I can sell at the back of the room through employing these techniques, which is proven over time to have better results than if you just stand up and, you know, deliver a presentation very dryly. I hope that helps. By the way, I don't think it's an unethical thing to do that. I do, however, think that over time that you're going to have to see seminar leaders and presenters change their own blueprint, because we will get tired of that over time, and we will catch on to that. And we're not going to believe that this is a $20,000 offer, you know, $20,000 package, when we know 10 seconds later you're going to offer it to us today for the low special price of $497. We're not going to buy that stuff. And whenever we start to see the pattern, then I think the presenters are going to start to lose authenticity. They're going to lose a little bit of their integrity, and maybe they'll start to see the results go down, and then we'll have to have another pattern as well. Stephanie, anything that you'd like to add to that, or move on to the next question?
I totally agree with everything you said. As usual, I'm over here nodding and saying yep, yep, yep as you're talking. I think that you'll find that a lot of, I don't know about a lot, but I think more and more speakers are getting to the point where they are delivering more content in their presentations and having a much more softer sell, you know, from the stage, thank goodness. So I do see that trend taking hold more and more. So, you know, thank goodness for that.
Yeah, that's certainly my style. My style is to be about 90% content and maybe 10%, this is how we can work together. If this is right for you, we'd love to talk to you about how we can help you accomplish your dreams. You know, that kind of a sharing and invitation approach, rather than, you know, the first 10 of you that run to the back of the room and throw your credit card on the table are going to get a new car. I'm not much into that.
Yeah.
It's not me. Okay, next. Yep. Next step.
Well, we got a comment here kind of along the same vein, and okay. It's I am so there with the high point sales, and how do we shift our thinking and presentations so it's not so salesy?
I think it just takes a conscious effort. You know, it takes a conscious effort of, you know, saying to yourself that I'm going to be about 80% content or 90% content. And you know, we see that, you know, in television shows and radio shows all the time, you know, where you have a lot of content and then they have a break for commercials. They have a great break for their sponsors. So a lot of what they do is 80% content and 20%, you know, commercials and sponsors and invitations to buy something. Or maybe it's 90-10. You know, out of a 30-minute radio show, you might have you know, 25 minutes of content and 5 minutes of commercials. Maybe it's 28 and 2. Maybe it's 22 and 8. But anyway, it's a lot more. I think we just consciously make the choice to say, I'm going to be 80% content and 20% commercial, or 90% content and 10% commercial today, because that's the style that I want to use instead of being so salesy. I think that's how you do it.
Yeah. I think the other thing to remember is that it is okay to ask for the sale. It is okay to say, here's what I'm offering, here's how I can help you. I think that so many people find a hard time, or have a hard time finding that middle ground. So, but there is a middle ground.
You know, and I oftentimes say that if you have a hard time asking for the business, it's because you lack confidence in your ability to help somebody else achieve their dreams. When you are 100% confident that you can help people do what they want to do, and that there's a very fair exchange of value. In fact, you know, they're going to give you $1,000 and get $10,000 worth of benefit out of it. When you really feel that, and you know that, and you're 100% confident in it, there is no hesitation at all asking for the order. You know, because you really believe that this would be a wonderful, wonderful thing for this person to do, and a really win-win relationship for both of you. So, but some people are not quite as confident as they would like to be, and so it becomes tough for them to ask for the order.
Next question?
Yes, please.
I think I need to update my business plan to concentrate on my core business. Raising capital is going very slowly. Am I giving up on my dream?
Boy, that is a tough one. Anytime you start to have a conversation about giving up on your dreams, that is a tough conversation. And raising capital is going slowly is a tough conversation. Let's take the raising capital is going slowly conversation. So a lot of times when people say the raising capital is going slowly is because they're going slow at raising capital. You know, it's because they're making like one presentation, you know, every 2 weeks or 3 weeks. They're waiting for a prospect to come along, and then they're making a presentation to them instead of being highly proactive. So my advice to somebody who's raising capital is always to think about doing one presentation a day. If you need to raise, you know, $500,000 from 50 people, $10,000 at a time, you may find that you're going to have 250 presentations with a closing ratio of 20% in order to get the 50 people who are going to invest the $10,000 so you can get your $500,000. I know that math went very quickly, but generally speaking, if you know anything at all about sales, you know that it's a numbers game, that you don't close every deal. Every time that you make a presentation, that person isn't going to write you a check unless you are just golden. And you know, 99% of the time that doesn't happen. 99% of the time we play the numbers game when it comes to raising capital. So if raising capital is going slowly, I'd invite you to have a conversation with us or some other capital coach that can talk to you about your activity levels and how important it is to get out there and network like crazy and make those pitches and make those presentations so that you just speed up the number of investor prospects that you talk to. Other things about raising capital, it might be the offer itself. It might be that your offer isn't sweet enough, that you may need to change the offer itself and the part of your company that you're selling. If you have to change the offer, by the way, that is a conversation you need to have with your securities attorneys and your other advisors, because it's not something you can just do arbitrarily. You can't go out today and say, I'm selling 20% of my company for $1 million, and then go out tomorrow and say, I'm selling 25% of my company for $1 million, and then go out the next day and say, I'm selling 10% of my company for $1 million. You can't do that. You have to be very, very consistent in your offering itself. Other thing I would take a look at is the pitch deck, and your presentation skills. One of the things that I do for clients, what I do for investors and for people raising capital, is called a funding evaluation, where we take a look at all of your documents, your business plans, your legal documents, your pitch decks. We listen to you pitch, we have conversations with you, and give you a really good assessment about how you are doing and the things that we think you can focus on in order to improve your chances of raising capital. So that was like half of the answer. The other half of the answer is, how do you tell when it's time to go back to the core business or to set this aside for a while? And the answer is, when it's not working. When it's really not working for you and you don't have the time or the energy or the mindset in order to make some of those changes that I just talked about making, maybe it really is time for you to go back to the core business and get that ship righted before you go out and raise capital. Every once in a while I work with somebody and help them write a business plan and do an investor grade pitch deck and financial model. And when we get down to taking a look at the financial history of the company, we see that for the last several months they haven't been profitable. For the last 6 months or the last year, their results haven't been stellar. And my recommendation to them is usually you need to get your own house in order before you go back and raise capital, because any sophisticated investor is going to take a look at this and say, why should I invest in a business that's only growing a little bit or a business that's not profitable at all? So get your story straight and get your own house in order before you go out to raise capital. Oftentimes throwing extra money at a bad business model is not going to make that business model more successful. So it's not always the right thing to do to raise capital for a business that's struggling. Sometimes the right thing to do is to let people go, is to stop some of those programs that aren't returning a good ROI on their investment, to focus more on sales and delivery, to focus more on cash generating activities so that you can right the ship, so you can have a much more attractive business to gain the interest of investors. So all of those, hopefully, all of those gave you a little bit of food for thought going forward. Stephanie, next comment or another question?
Okay. The fourth industrial revolution with the Internet of Things and smart connected products is upon us. How do we repurpose proven business models without getting carried away with the hype?
Wow, that's a really good one, because anytime you have a disruptive technology like that seeks to change the way we do things, the way that we live life, it's always highly unpredictable. You just got to take your best stab at what this means in terms of the products that are going to be on the marketplace and the upgrades to things like and the Internet of Things, it's like we're seeing smart refrigerators. Somebody, was it LG, introduced a refrigerator that was called like the Hub Zone, where they had a TV screen and places that you could, essentially keep track of the family's calendar and the family's list of things to do. And it was on a TV on the door to the refrigerator, because they figure that that's the place where people go many, many times a day. That is the hub spot for family activities. Wow, I didn't see that one coming, but somebody at either LG or Samsung, I'm not sure which one, they saw it coming and they introduced the product. We're seeing smart homes, smart cars, smart microwaves, smart everything, and it's all going to be connected with the Internet of Things. And I think with Internet of Things, and I think we just do our best to predict how that's going to change the way that we live our life, when everything, our phones and our cars and our TVs and our refrigerators and our washing machines and our sprinkler systems and the garage light and the upstairs, doorway and windows and all that stuff is all connected, and everything is wired together. That is a great question. But anytime that you have disruptive technology like that threatens to, or promises to, in this case, really change the way that we live life, you got to make a guess and you got to go for it. And sometimes you're going to be right and sometimes you're going to be wrong about what the marketplace really wants and how you can really serve the marketplace. I'm a big fan of lean startup methodology, where we test and we test and we test, but that doesn't apply when there's a disruptive technology. With disruptive technologies, where you can't test because nobody's doing what you want to do, you can only do surveys and ask people if they're interested, but you really don't even know if they're interested in that. Sometimes you just got to make a big guess, invest heavily in it, and then make adjustments to the product and service offering after you do actually get that into the marketplace. I hope that was helpful. That was a great question, by the way, about the fourth industrial revolution that's coming on us. That's going to be very exciting. I was at the conference I was at last week. I was talking about how rapidly things change. And about 3 weeks ago, I was coming home from an event in Mountain View, California, which is the home, by the way, of Google. And to the right of me, there were like 2 cars pulled up. And the first of them, one of them didn't have a driver in it. It was one of these Google driverless cars. And the one behind it had a person in it, but he wasn't driving the car. And the car that pulled up right next to me at the stoplight started to turn right on red and went about 2 feet into the intersection and stopped because it saw a car coming through the intersection on a yellow light, coming through pretty fast on a yellow light. And it stopped just like you or I would if we were paying attention. And after the car had passed, the car looked both ways, and then it proceeded to turn right. It was just the strangest darn thing I ever saw. But we have to get used to that. We have to get used to our microwaves talking to us and our washing machines talking to us and our, and our cell phones being, the hub spot for everything that tells us what's going on, and, that our left rear tire is almost flat and all kinds of things. So it's going to be the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years are going to be pretty darn exciting. That's for sure. Stephanie, any comments yourself or another question?
Yeah. I think that these, I'm trying to think of the phrase that you just used, but when new technology and this fourth industrial revolution, I think that it presents so many opportunities and so many, I love that word, opportunities. I just think it brings so many chances for us to grab the best, adjust our business with the best of the best. Does that make sense? I don't think I'm articulating what I'm trying to say very well.
Close to make sense, but yeah, we do have an opportunity to make a stab in the marketplace when everything changes out there. We can be a part of that change, and with good luck and good marketing skills and good engineering skills, hopefully we can be a big part of that. About leveraging the opportunities that always come with disruptive technologies. I'm going to take just a minute before our next question here and talk a little bit about who we are and what we do. Here at the Hoyt Management Group, our distinctions are that we really focus on the whole person. We want you to get the support that you want, that you can use and you can afford, and we really do understand the relationship in between the inner game and the outer game. You know, most of the focus is on the outer game, but we're strong believers that personal and spiritual growth help you become a stronger person, capable of forming better relationships that help you step into your potential and your ability to perform at peak levels more often. And we really want to focus on that as well. That's what the Awaken CEO system is all about. We are a planning and education firm, but we have a heavy emphasis on the execution, because we know that no matter how great our plans are, that the vision, the status, and the plan, and gathering the resources, which are the first 4 steps in the Awaken CEO growth process, are really only about 5% of the work. 95% of the work is all about the execution itself. And we love to talk to you about how we can help you form great plans and get very clear on what you want to do and how you're going to get it done, and then also assist you with the execution of those plans and the updates to those plans over time. Our next office hours is going to be 2 weeks out. We're skipping 2 weeks because next week is July 4th. On Monday, July 4th, we're going to enjoy a little time off, and we encourage you to do the same. So happy 4th of July. The next topic is still to be determined, so you can let me know what topics you'd like for me to address at paulsurvey.com. We invite you to sign into our tribe portal and take a look at the 100 presentations that we've got there. And if there's a follow-up one that you'd like to have, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to give people what they want to receive. So if you just let us know, we'd be happy to do that with you. So with that, let's jump back. That brief commercial announcement, speaking about the 95 and 5% rule, I think today we're about 98% content and about 2% salesmanship. But we really would love to have the opportunity to help you achieve what you want to achieve, to build a business of your dreams, a profitable, scalable, sustainable business, because, hey, that's what we love to do, and that's what we're experts at doing. With that, let's jump back in to Q&A here for another 20, 25 minutes.
Okay, next question. I need to update my accounting system, and I've been using Quicken Home and Office for a while. What is your opinion about QuickBooks? Do you think that's a good choice, or any other referrals?
You know, for most companies, if they've been on Quicken Home and Office, QuickBooks is a very good upgrade. QuickBooks has much better capability for financial reporting, a lot more flexibility in your account structure and what you do with it. And there's lots and lots of QuickBooks Pro advisors and experts in bookkeeping that can support you in using QuickBooks. Many of them, I think, are more experienced in QuickBooks than they are Quicken Home and Office. So it's got more features to it. There are options to go to a multi-user mode. You can host it. There's QuickBooks Online. There's QuickBooks on your desktop, where you can have other people tunnel into the system so you can access it from another place, or your bookkeeper can be in California while you're in New Jersey. You know, there's all kinds of options with QuickBooks that I don't think that you have with Quicken. There are circumstances where that's not the right choice, but right now, today, QuickBooks enjoys about an 80% market share for all businesses, I think, with $5 million in revenue and less. When you get to be over $5 million or over $10 million in revenue, then there are a lot of other packages that you might want to take advantage of. Microsoft Dynamics, there's Oracle Online, or it's NetSuite rather, that is kind of based on Oracle technology that's available online. Those are the two biggest ones that I know of, NetSuite and Microsoft Dynamics, that you might take a look at. I've seen other people use Peachtree. There are other very special purpose accounting systems that are not separate from the operational systems of a particular market segment. So you might find a system for attorneys, or another one's for CPAs, or another one for construction companies that is not a QuickBooks-based system, but is where accounting and bookkeeping is rolled into a very complete and complex solution for a very specific market niche. So you might take a look at those as well. As you want to upgrade, think about, am I ready for, a very specialized information system that happens to include accounting and bookkeeping module to it in the context of everything else. I would say, by the way, that those cost a lot more. QuickBooks is remarkably inexpensive. What is it, like $300? You only have to spend like $300 every few years on QuickBooks in order to have a great accounting system. With some of the ones I've been talking about, with those very specialized systems, with Microsoft Dynamics and with NetSuite, it's thousands and thousands of dollars a year in order to use those more robust, more complex, or highly specialized systems. So if you're uncertain, my advice is, what it typically is work with a coach or a consultant to help you understand what your requirements are and to help you evaluate your opportunities and your options and make a good decision and actually implement that. I would say, by the way, one other thing, I've had 30 years experience in information systems. The cost of going to a new information systems product, a new system, is only partially the software. There's also the cost of training, there's the cost of conversion, there's a cost of customization, there's the cost of system integration with other software packages that you might have. So, just taking a look at the cost of the software itself can be a very, very small part of the overall cost of making a change in your information systems portfolio. So I'd urge you to talk to somebody who has years and years of experience that can help you think through that anytime that you want to change a part of your information systems portfolio, that impacts the rest of your business. Hopefully that was helpful. Stephanie, comment or question?
I think that that's just such an important thing for people to remember, is that the cost of the software is just a portion of the cost. Mm-hmm. The learning curve and training and customization and all those other pieces that you mentioned are so important. Whether it's for Quicken or QuickBooks, or whether it's for Infusionsoft or MailChimp or any other software that you add. Awesome. Absolutely. Yep. Okay, I got a question here. I'm thinking I want to have an event for my business. Do you have any advice for me in getting started?
Absolutely, I do. It's hire an event manager. Hire an experienced event manager. We're fortunate here at our company because Stephanie has years and years and years of experience in event management. And it's not nearly as easy as it looks like. I mean, if you go to an event and the event is run extremely smooth, and everybody shows up at the right time, and all of the audio-visual stuff works, and the handouts are there, and the meals are at the right place at the right time, and it looks like it's very easy about how things came together, that's because somebody worked their fanny off for the previous 3 to 6 months, making sure that everything went smoothly when you showed up. A good event is like a duck that looks like they're serenely floating on the surface of a pond, but if you look underneath the water, they're just scrambling. Their little feet are going like crazy, scrambling around, even though they look serene on the surface. So if you're thinking about doing your own event, have conversations with, engage the services of event managers, and I might also encourage you to work backstage at an event. Volunteer to be on staff for an event that you really respect, so you can start to see what goes on backstage, during the event itself. But typically volunteers for the events, they only see what goes on the day before the event, during the event, and maybe the day after the event. They don't see the months of planning and preparation that needs to go on to prepare for the day before the event. So if you want to have your own event, talk to people who have had their own events, and talk to event managers and get real about what the costs are and about what the level of preparation is necessary in order to have an event so that you can look like the duck that's floating sort of smoothly and serenely on the surface of the pond and you won't look like, it's Donald Duck going crazy, trying to figure out where that next speaker is and where that next handout is, and oh my God, the meals aren't on time, and there's a zillion things that can go wrong, and it takes years of experience to make sure that they don't. Stephanie, does that sound about right, dear?
Yep. It's a great start. I encourage anybody who is thinking about having an event to keep in mind a couple things. One of the first questions I always ask people is, what's the goal? What's the goal of the event? To just say I want to teach something, or I want to show something, I want to introduce something, is not just the only reason that you want to have an event. There should always be something that comes after. If you've done a good job at the event, if you've done the job that you came there for, you can bet your booties that your attendees are going to want to know what's next. What else is there? How else can I keep this going? How can I keep my momentum? What can I do next with you guys? So there's a heck of a lot more than just the event itself. There's the pre-event and the post-event activities as well. So event is a product. It can be a service or a product, or somehow it needs to fit into your product funnel. So consider it as a piece of your whole big picture, not as just something that you want to do because it sounds like it can be a whole, just because you want to teach something. Does that make sense, Paul?
Yeah, that's awesome advice. Make it part of your overall company strategy, that facilitates the sales and the revenues and the profits of your company, not just because you want to have a microphone to sing a song or two. Okay.
Next question?
Yep.
I'm struggling with communicating with my investors and trying hard to make sure that they're meeting all of the requirements and qualifications to stay compliant with the new investing laws. How can you help me with this?
Wow. So let me see if I understand the question right. That your investors are not like, maybe they're not wanting to sign the documents, or they're not. I'm going to take it like that. They're just not following the rules that we need for them to follow with the new laws. Well, first of all, it's your responsibility. You're the CEO of the company. You are the issuer. You cannot issue shares of stock. You cannot complete the transaction unless you have all of the paperwork in place. If there are forms that somebody has to sign, if they have to fill out, for example, investor questionnaire to say whether or not they're a qualified investor, in the self-reporting days, or if you're doing a 506c offering, and it's your responsibility to certify whether or not they're an accredited investor and they're not providing the information, then you cannot complete the transaction. Compliance is your responsibility. It's not their responsibility. If they're hesitating, if they're having issues with it, I would volunteer to help them through that process. I would say, hey, let me come online with you and help you fill out this information. Or let me sit down with you and we'll go over the agreement step by step by step so that you can sign it and feel safe about that. Just do anything and everything that you can to facilitate their wanting to invest in the business while they're doing it in a very compliant way. Real estate professionals, insurance professionals, financial service professionals, we do this all the time. If we're going to close on a house, you're going to go to a closing event and somebody's going to walk you through the process step by step by step by step by step. They're going to say, you need to sign this here, you need to sign that there, you need to write me a check now, you need to acknowledge this, here's a cup of coffee, here's a piece of candy. We make it as comfortable as possible, but it's responsible of the person who is selling it to make sure that all of the paperwork is completed accurately and completely before the transaction can be seen as being completed. And one really important thing, by the way, when you're raising capital is once you've got somebody's signature on a piece of paper and you've got their check in your bank account, don't forget to send them the shares of stock. You have to complete the transaction, and that means issuing the shares. That means going to your corporate logbook and grabbing out your shareholder certificates and filling them out appropriately and signing them and making sure that they're delivered via certified delivery or some other means where you know for a fact that you have in fact delivered the shares to the individual. You can even get them to acknowledge that they received the shares and mail something back to you physically so that you've got that kind of acknowledgement. I mean, that's also your responsibility, and I have seen some companies fail in that particular stage. They did everything right except for they forgot to issue the shares, or they forgot to make sure that their investor received their shareholder certificates. So, don't forget to do that. I hope, and hopefully that's helpful to you. Next question or comments, Stephanie.
Okay. How can I become more conscious when I'm struggling so much to just survive?
Wow, that is a great question. One of my favorite phrases is that it's the pain that wakes us up. And what that means is that if you're struggling to survive or you're struggling in any area, the tendency is to just stay attached to those thoughts and stay attached to that problem and get caught up into your story. But the opportunity is for just a few minutes every day, 10 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, 20 minutes twice a day, to step back and relax and ask yourself, what is the lesson here? If the universe is trying to teach me a lesson, if there's an opportunity to learn a lesson from this challenging experience, what would that lesson be? Or if there's a silver lining on this cloud, what would that silver lining be? If you get in the habit of asking yourself about, what is the lesson in the challenge? If this pain was here to serve to wake me up to something, what is it that it's waking me up to? And to ask yourself a question and to have those conversations with your support team, your coaches, your therapists, your family members, whoever can support you during a very tough time, during a struggle, then you're going to be very far off. Because generally speaking, I'm a firm believer that we attract into us things that are designed to teach us things that are valuable, things that bug the crap out of us, that cause us to have responses of fear and anger, are there to show us what's most valuable to us and show us ways that we can embrace those things that are most valuable to us and avoid pushing them away through some unconscious or childhood survival strategy that doesn't work for us anymore now that we're 45 years old. So to me, consciousness is a practice. There are lots of techniques for just letting go of the stress of the moment. Byron Katie has a wonderful process she calls the work, which is 4 great questions and a turnaround. I'm a big fan of just relaxation, of sitting back and just relaxing your body and, the best you possibly can, get into a completely relaxed state and then see what comes up for you. There are therapists that you can go through that can help you talk through and analyze your behavior to help you understand how you might have come to be in the habit of this behavior in the first place or made the choices that you did so you can make better choices going forward, etc. There are lots of people out there that are willing to support you in that as long as you're committed to doing it. If you're committed to being a happier person, you can become a happier person. If you're committed to becoming a person that's more patient and loving and wise and has greater relationships, you can do that. But it takes practice. It's not always easy. It's not always fun. And it's usually not as quick as we want it to be. But over time, practicing your own awakening, practicing consciousness can really, really pay off for you. I encourage you to do that. Stephanie, anything to add?
You and I were kind of chatting about this morning. I find that sometimes just the act of survival and being in that place can lead a person to begin or to expand their practice of consciousness the journey to a higher consciousness. There you go. Can help us accelerate the journey to our higher consciousness. And so I think that when you are in that place, sometimes just one little step to get out, you know, one step at a time, right? One step here, one step there, just one thing. Can I do one thing today to help me get out of this place where I am?
Yeah.
And if you need any help with that, there are you know, videos, is music, you have Paul, you've got me, you've got people in your community and people all around you who would love to help you get out of that. So,
Yeah.
um,
And one of the surprises on the road to enlightenment for me is that, you know, when you're deep in the pit of darkness, it's really, really hard to make that first step. It's pretty easy to make a step in the direction of higher consciousness. If you're almost there, I mean, it only takes just a second. But if you're deep in the pit of darkness, deep in despair, it is hard, you know, to make progress. And it may take a trained therapist or trained coach or counselor in order to help you make those first critical steps. Next question or comment, Stephanie.
that's it for the questions for today that I have.
Well, I think the timing is relatively perfect. It's 12:59. I want to thank everybody who joined us today, both online and live, and those who are listening to the recordings. Those of you who dialed in via the telephone, we love to do anything that we can, everything that we can to support small business owners in starting and growing the business of their dreams. If there's anything that we can do to support you, please give us a shout out. We'd love to explore that opportunity. And until we talk again next a couple of weeks, we're just skipping next week's because it's happy Independence Day, happy 4th of July. Until we see each other again in a couple of weeks, this is Paul Hoyt and Stephanie May wishing you a most marvelous and prosperous day. Bye-bye.